Hello, everyone. Welcome back to English Pod. My name is Marco.
And I'm Erica.
And today we're bringing you an advanced lesson for all of our advanced learners out there.
That's right. And in this lesson, we're visiting a history class.
Yes, we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic that's known around the world, which is International Workers' Day.
That's right. And we're going to learn a little bit about the history of the workers' movement in the United States.
Right, but we're also going to be taking a look at some great words and, of course, a little bit more advanced or complicated structures.
That's right. So I guess without further ado, we can get started with the dialogue.
All right, everyone, settle down. Let's get started. As you know, an important aspect of becoming a good citizen is understanding the genesis of our legal system. It's not enough to simply memorize our laws. It's necessary that we comprehend why and how they were formed. This brings me to our topic for today. Does anyone know what we celebrate on May 1st?
Cinco de Mayo.
No, that's May 5th in Spanish, James. No wonder you're failing my Spanish class. No, May 1st is International Workers' Day.
Do we get a day off from school then?
No, it is not considered to be a national holiday here in the U.S., but in other countries it is.
Oh, man.
In the 19th century, working conditions were appalling, with workers being forced to work 10, 12, and 14 hours a day. Support for the 8-hour workday movement was growing rapidly, despite the indifference and hostility of many union leaders. And by April 1886, 250,000 workers were involved in the May Day movement. Previous legislative attempts to improve working conditions had failed, so labor organizers took drastic measures. They passed a resolution stating that 8 hours would constitute a legal day's work. And on May 1st, 1886, the resolution took effect.
Cool. Is that why we only work 8 hours now?
Yes, but the happy ending came at a high price. On May 3rd, 1886, police fired into a crowd of strikers at the McCormick Reaper Works factory, killing 4 and wounding many. A mass meeting was called for the next day to protest the brutality.
And then what happened?
Well, as we say, the rest is history.
All right, so we were in a history class and we learned something new, something interesting, right?
Yeah, International Workers' Day. It says it's not celebrated in the U.S., but in many other countries it is.
Right, on May 1st, a lot of people have a day off, so that's always good.
Yes.
All right, so why don't we take a look at some of the words that we saw in this dialogue, which were maybe a little bit different or difficult in language takeaway.
Language takeaway.
All right, we're just going to look at 5 words here. And the first one, we talked about the genesis of the movement.
Right, Genesis.
Genesis.
Okay, so many of you may know that Genesis is a book in the Bible, right?
That's right. And that's where this word comes from. It's the first book in the Bible.
So it's the beginning.
Or the origin.
Origin. So that's a Genesis. So the genesis of our legal system, you would say.
Right. Or the genesis of this problem.
So it's the origin.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a formal word, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess maybe you can say the origin or the beginning.
Yeah, but maybe in an academic setting, you can talk about the genesis.
Yes, very good. All right, what do we have next?
Well, one of the reasons why the workers' movement got started was because of the appalling working conditions.
Appalling.
Appalling.
If something is appalling,
It's shockingly bad.
very, very bad.
Yeah.
So now if something is appalling, like the working conditions were appalling,
That's right.
you would feel appalled.
Exactly. I'm appalled at your behavior.
Okay, so it's almost like you are disgusted.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Very, very strong word.
Yeah, very strong.
Okay, so the working conditions were appalling and people were setting up this movement, right? But what happened?
They met some hostility.
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 Hostility from the police, right?
That's right.
So what is hostility?
Hostility is the state of receiving an unfriendly reaction.
Okay.
They acted in a very unfriendly way, and it also suggests, a hint of violence even.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if somebody is hostile, they can maybe be aggressive and maybe to a point violent.
That's right.
Okay. So a hostile person.
Yeah, or a hostile environment, a dangerous environment.
Okay, hostility, hostile. Very good.
Yeah. Now, because of these appalling working conditions, the labor movement decided to take drastic measures.
Drastic measures.
Yeah, drastic measures. This is a really wonderful phrase, and I think it would help us to listen to a few examples of this phrase in use.
Example 1. The president was faced with some difficult decisions and was forced to take drastic measures to solve the crisis. Example 2.
The police took very drastic measures to control the protesters outside the government palace.
So we understand drastic measures as extreme actions or decisions, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's a saying that says desperate times call for drastic measures.
No, desperate times call for desperate measures.
Oh, dang. Well, okay, but it goes around there somewhere, right?
Something
so
like that.
If you really have an emergency, you need to do something drastic.
You have to take drastic measures, or you can even say take drastic action.
Okay, very good. And what about our last word?
After the protests ended in violence, people started to get angry because of the brutality the police showed.
Okay, brutality.
Brutality.
So again, maybe brutality and hostility are maybe similar, right?
A little bit similar. So brutality is the state of being harsh or very forceful.
Okay, so brutality. Now, we also use the word brutal.
Right. So that means harsh or very forceful.
Now, sometimes we can use that word, but not in a harsh or forceful way, right?
Yeah, and it's quite, yeah, I might say something like, oh my God, that test was brutal.
Uh-huh, it was brutal or...
So it was really hard or really difficult.
Right, so that's what you're saying with this word, that it's very hard or it was very intense.
Yeah, maybe one more example.
Okay, so for example, I can say, oh, I went for a run today and it was brutal. I'm so tired.
So it was really difficult.
Yeah. Brutal.
And Marco, is this something that's used by everyone?
That phrase, brutal, using in that context would be for younger people maybe. Not really, you wouldn't really hear older people using it like
So
that.
it's a little bit slangy.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Great. So those are 5 interesting vocabulary words. As Marco mentioned, we want to look at some more difficult structures now in Fluency Builder.
Fluency Builder.
Okay, so we have some phrases that we saw in this dialogue. And, well, let's start with the first one.
Well, the teacher opens his discussion by talking about how an understanding of the legal system is an important aspect of being a good citizen.
Okay, an important aspect.
An important aspect.
So, well, maybe we know the word important, right? So what's
Obviously.
an aspect?
A part of something, an important part of something.
Okay, so the teacher started with an important aspect of and then specified the idea or what part it belongs to.
Right, so it usually follows this form. Noun is an important aspect of noun.
Okay,
So for example, quality control is an important aspect of keeping customers happy.
okay, perfect. A part of. Very good. So aspect sounds a little bit more formal or just a lot more intelligent, right?
Yeah, professional. And actually, this is a wonderful way of setting up your idea.
So the teacher said that it's an important aspect of understanding the legal system was understanding its origins or its genesis.
Yep.
And then she moved on and said that it's not enough to simply memorize laws.
That's right. It's not enough to simply do something.
Okay. So the beginning of this sentence, it is not enough to simply something. Mm-hmm. By starting a sentence like this, you are indicating that more is required, right?
So here, it's not enough to simply memorize the laws. We're saying that most people just memorize the laws, but they need to go further.
And understand them.
Exactly.
Another example would be, it's not enough to simply pass your exams. You must get good grades as well.
Right. Or maybe in a business context. It's not enough to simply satisfy your customers. You must impress them.
Okay, very good. So that's a very good way of starting out this idea of more is required.
That's right. More is required.
All right.
All right. Well, I want to move on to one final point here. I found this sentence to be really, really interesting. They passed a resolution stating that 8 hours would constitute a legal day's work.
Okay, so why is this interesting?
Well, I found that, there's 2 verbs going on here. They passed a resolution that 8 hours would constitute a
Okay.
legal day's work. So we've got 2 verb times going on here at the same time. And I'm wondering about this one would.
Okay, so what's happening here? Obviously, this happened in the past. It's like about 100 years ago, right?
Right. So the resolution was passed 100 years ago.
Right? So this is going on in the past.
Right.
But there was a future action that was going to happen in consequence of this.
Right. So the resolution stated that 8 hours would constitute. So that's like the primary action was the passing of the resolution. And the result is this sort of this event that happens in the past but is a future event to the first primary event. Does that make any sense at all?
So this is called the future in the past, right?
That's right.
Okay, so it's a grammar structure. Many of you maybe know the simple present or the future tenses, but this is a little strange one. And as we said, so maybe it's a little bit difficult to understand the grammar in general. So why don't we take a look at some more examples of how we would use this future in the past?
Example 1. The president said that he would cut taxes by 5%. Example 2.
I made a promise that I would not smoke anymore.
Example 3. Carl told me he would buy a new car.
Okay, so now I think it's clear this whole idea of the future in the past, and we'll also be answering any questions on the site if you have any problems, right?
That's right.
Okay, so why don't we listen to the dialogue one more time, and then we'll come back and talk about this holiday, which is the International Workers' Day.
All right, everyone, settle down. Let's get started. As you know, an important aspect of becoming a good citizen is understanding the genesis of our legal system. It's not enough to simply memorize our laws. It's necessary that we comprehend why and how they were formed. This brings me to our topic for today. Does anyone know what we celebrate on May 1st?
Cinco de Mayo.
No, that's May 5th in Spanish, James. No wonder you're failing my Spanish class. No, May 1st is International Workers' Day.
Do we get a day off from school then?
No, it is not considered to be a national holiday here in the U.S., but in other countries it is.
Oh, man.
In the 19th century, working conditions were appalling, with workers being forced to work 10, 12, and 14 hours a day. Support for the 8-hour workday movement was growing rapidly, despite the indifference and hostility of many union leaders. And by April 1886, 250,000 workers were involved in the May Day movement. Previous legislative attempts to improve working conditions had failed, so labor organizers took drastic measures. They passed a resolution stating that 8 hours would constitute a legal day's work. And on May 1st, 1886, the resolution took effect.
Cool. Is that why we only work 8 hours now?
Yes, but the happy ending came at a high price. On May 3rd, 1886, police fired into a crowd of strikers at the McCormick Reaper Works factory, killing 4 and wounding many. A mass meeting was called for the next day to protest the brutality.
And then what happened?
Well, as we say, the rest is history.
All right, so Erica, in Canada, do you celebrate this?
We do, but not on May 1st.
Oh, really? When is it?
The first weekend in September.
Oh, really? And why?
I am not 100% sure. I think it's because we already have a long weekend in May because because on the 24th of May is the Queen Victoria's birthday, so we have to celebrate that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we can't have 2 vacations in the same month.
Oh, wow. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not productive, right?
Exactly.
Well,
what about in Ecuador?
Yeah, we do. On May 1st, it's a holiday, and we actually have 2 holidays in May as well, because on the 24th, we actually celebrate the Battle of Pichincha, which is one of the decisive battles for the independence of Ecuador. So we don't mind having 2 holidays in the same month.
Well, it sounds like Ecuador has a better holiday schedule than Canada. So
No, it
yeah.
is. So yeah, on May 1st, people take vacations, or companies usually on May 1st will do something special for their employees.
Oh, that's kind of a nice gesture, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's like it's Workers' Day, so they'll set up maybe a barbecue or a trip or something like that. So that's what usually happens on May 1st.
Great. Well, what about in your countries, listeners? Do you celebrate May Day?
May Day.
Yeah.
May 1st, right? The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word.
Relax. Become calm. Settle down. Part. Aspect. Origin, beginning. Genesis. Understand it deeply. Comprehend. The day that all people in a country will be on holiday. National holiday. Terrible, horrible, shocking. Appalling. Showing no interest in. Indifference. The attitude of treating something as enemy. Hostility. Relating to legal system. Legislative. Sudden and severe. Drastic. A formal document stating the wishes of a group. Resolution. Form, consist. Constitute. Violent treatment or behavior. Brutality. Shoot guns into a place. Fire into. Describing an event that is done to honor and remember a person or event in history, in commemoration of. The lowest socioeconomic class, workers. Proletariat. A public meeting of a large group of people to support or oppose something. Rally. An official statement made by a person who has power. Proclamation. Something like a statue built to remember a person or event from history. Memorial. Let's try that faster. Shoot guns into a place. Fire into. Terrible, horrible, shocking. Appalling. Form, consist. Constitute. Relax, become calm. Settle down. Violent treatment or behavior. Brutality. Relating to legal system. Legislative. The attitude of treating something as enemy. Hostility. The lowest socioeconomic class, workers. Proletariat. Describing an event that is done to honor and remember a person or event in history, in commemoration of. Sudden and severe. Drastic. Part. Aspect. Origin, beginning. Genesis. A formal document stating the wishes of a group. Resolution. Something like a statue built to remember a person or event from history. Memorial. The day that all people in a country will be on holiday. National holiday. An official statement made by a person who has power. Proclamation. Showing no interest in. Indifference. A public meeting of a large group of people to support or oppose something. Rally. Understand it deeply. Comprehend. Now say the word and hear it in a sentence. Genesis. How did you get started on this project? What was its genesis? Genesis. We need to identify the genesis of this problem. Genesis. I'm studying the genesis of the feminist movement. Appalling. The way those poor children have been treated is just appalling. Appalling. I'm absolutely appalled by your behavior. Appalling. The service in that restaurant was appalling. It took 45 minutes for them to bring us our wine. Legislative. We can't just rely on self-enforced policy. We must find a legislative solution. Legislative. I don't know much about the legislative process in the U.S. Legislative. The president can't decide the laws. That's the responsibility of the legislative branch of government. Resolution. The board will vote on a resolution asking the president to resign. Resolution. The UN Security Council passed a resolution regarding the Middle East. Resolution. A resolution was introduced in the Senate supporting states' rights. We've got to take drastic measures. I think we should cut off his leg. This calls for drastic measures. I'm declaring a state of emergency. We've got to take drastic measures to cut our costs.
Hello, English learners. Welcome back to another lesson here with us at English Pod. My name is Marco.
And I'm Erica.
And today we are going to have a very casual, normal conversation.
That's right. We're going to listen in on some small talk between a taxi driver and the passenger.
Small talk. So that's basically...
small, short conversations you have with someone that you don't know very well.
Okay, so typical questions like how old are you, where you're from,
Yep.
etc.
That's right. And this can be really hard for English learners because they often don't know what the right thing to say or the right thing to talk about. So we're going to give you a lot of phrases in this lesson that you can use in small talk.
Okay, so we don't have anything to preview today, so let's listen to the dialogue for the first time and then we'll come back.
Where to, miss?
Hi, Crenshaw and Hawthorne at the Holiday Inn that is on that corner.
Sure thing. So, where are you flying in from?
From China.
Really? You don't look very Chinese to me, if you don't mind me saying so.
It's fine. I am actually from Mexico. I was in China on a business trip, visiting some local companies that manufacture bathroom products.
Wow, sounds interesting. Excuse me if I'm being a bit nosy, but how old are you?
Don't you know it's rude to ask a lady her age?
Don't get me wrong. It's just that you seem so young and already doing business overseas.
Well, thank you. In that case, I am 26 years old. And what about yourself?
I'm 40 years old and was born and raised here in the good old US of A. Although I have some Colombian heritage.
Really? That's great. Do you speak Spanish?
Yeah, of course.
Qué bien, entonces podemos hablar en español.
All right, so I don't think this guy spoke much Spanish, do you?
No, even though he has Colombian heritage, I think he doesn't speak much. But maybe he's just a little bit rusty.
Maybe, but what he does speak is English, and since this is English Pod, why don't we look at some of the phrases that they used for small talk in Fluency Builder?
Fluency Builder.
All right, so today on Fluency Builder, we're going to take a look at phrases that both the passenger and the taxi driver use to make small talk. So why don't we start with the first one?
All right, so the taxi driver tells the passenger that she doesn't look very Chinese, if you don't mind me saying so.
Right, so he said, you don't look very Chinese to me, if you don't mind me saying so.
If you don't mind me saying so.
So what does he mean by this last part of his sentence?
Well, this is a phrase that we use to soften a sort of a statement that might be a little bit rude.
She could be Chinese.
Yeah.
Right? So it may be a little bit rude to say that, but he kind of apologizes.
That's right.
Right? By saying, if you don't mind me saying so.
Okay, so for example, I could say, hey, Marco, you look a little tired today, if you don't mind me saying so.
Okay, so does it always go at the end?
You could use it at the beginning. If you don't mind me saying so, I just don't think this is a good idea.
Okay, very good. So you can use this phrase in the beginning or at the end of a sentence.
Right, and it makes your statement a little bit less rude.
If you don't mind me saying so. Now, again, he also apologizes a little bit when he says, excuse me if I am being a bit nosy, but...
Excuse me if I'm being a bit nosy, but...
Excuse me if I'm being a bit nosy, but...
Okay, so let's take a look at this. Nosy, what's this?
Okay, when somebody is nosy, it means they're very curious. They are asking too many questions.
Yeah, asking more questions than they should ask.
Right. So he apologizes and says, well, excuse me if I'm asking too many questions. And then he asks her another question.
He asks her how old she is.
Right. So again, it's a polite way of maybe asking a question that might be a little bit sensitive.
Yeah, or a little bit impolite.
Okay. So, of course, asking a woman her age maybe is a little bit impolite, right?
Yes, typically women don't like that too much. But our next phrase, we heard the taxi driver say, don't get me wrong.
Don't get me wrong.
Don't get me wrong.
Okay, so don't get me wrong. He says, well, don't misunderstand what I'm saying.
That's right. This phrase is used so commonly in English that I think it would help us to hear some examples.
Example 1.
Don't get me wrong. It's not that I think you stole my computer. It's just that you were the only one who could get into my room.
Example 2. I do have a few problems with the plan, but don't get me wrong, I still think it's a good idea. Example 3.
Don't get me wrong. I think John's a nice guy. He's just a bit disorganized.
All right, very good example. So don't get me wrong, right?
That's right.
And now for the final phrase on putting it together today.
Well, the passenger, the woman, says her age. She says, I'm 26 years old, and what about yourself?
What about yourself?
What about yourself?
All right, now, this sentence isn't very correct, actually, right?
Yeah, technically it's not correct in grammar, but it is used so commonly every day by American English speakers that we thought we'd show it to you.
Okay, so you would say, I am 26 years old, and what about you?
That's right.
Okay, but commonly you will hear people say, what about yourself?
And if you use this, you'll sound really fluent and really native-like.
Okay, very good. So what about yourself?
So again, it's just like, what about you? So I could say, hey, Marco, I'm going away on holiday this weekend. And what about yourself?
Okay, what about yourself? So we've taken a look at these 4 phrases on putting it together. Why don't we listen to the dialogue for the second time? We're going to slow it down a little bit, and then we'll come back and take a look at some vocabulary words on language takeaway.
Where to, miss?
Hi, Crenshaw and Hawthorne at the Holiday Inn that is on that corner.
Sure thing. So, where are you flying in from?
From China.
Really? You don't look very Chinese to me, if you don't mind me saying so.
It's fine. I am actually from Mexico. I was in China on a business trip, visiting some local companies that manufacture bathroom products.
Wow, sounds interesting. Excuse me if I'm being a bit nosy, but how old are you?
Don't you know it's rude to ask a lady her age?
Don't get me wrong. It's just that you seem so young and already doing business overseas.
Well, thank you. In that case, I am 26 years old. And what about yourself?
I am 40 years old and was born and raised here in the good old US of A, although I have some Colombian heritage.
Really? That's great. Do you speak some Spanish?
Yeah, of course.
¡Qué bien! Entonces podemos hablar en español.
Well, we've got some interesting vocabulary words and phrases here in Language Takeaway. And the first one.
Well, after she gets in the taxi and tells him where she wants to go, he answers by saying, sure thing.
Sure thing.
Sure thing.
Sure thing.
So if I say, yeah, sure thing, what does that mean?
Well, let's listen to some examples to help us understand.
Example 1. Do you mind lending me $100?
Sure thing.
Example 2. Could you please send me the email by the end of the day?
Sure thing.
Example 3.
Do you mind lending me $100?
Sure thing.
Could you please send me the email by the end of the day?
Sure thing. Example 4. Can you get some milk on the way home?
Sure thing, I'm on my way now.
Okay, so sure thing, basically, yeah, no problem, or okay,
Or I'll do it.
I'll do it.
Yep.
It's fine.
Yep.
So it's a very common way. You will hear this a lot when somebody agrees or says, yes, no problem.
Yeah, and again, it will help you sound really native-like to use this phrase. Well, the next one, the taxi driver says, I was born and raised here.
I was born and raised here.
Born and raised.
Okay, so this is a way of saying I was born in this country and I haven't left this country.
That's right. So I'm from this country.
Okay, born and raised here in the good old US of A.
Good old US of A.
The good old US of A.
So this is a pretty interesting way of saying America.
Right. It's actually more of a phrase, right? The good old US of A.
Yep.
Okay, so it means the good United States of America.
Yeah, it's kind of a fond way or friendly way of describing America.
All right. And we have one more word for language takeaway.
Well, the taxi driver was talking about his Colombian heritage.
Colombian heritage.
Heritage.
All right, so if I have Colombian heritage, what does that mean?
Your grandmother or, grandfather, great-grandmother, or someone in your family is from Colombia.
Okay, and what about the word heritage by itself?
Yeah, so your heritage is basically your culture, your
customs.
Yeah, your customs, your history.
Okay, so heritage. A country rich in heritage.
Lots of good old historical culture in that country.
Okay, very good. So now it's time for us to listen to the dialogue for the last time. Now we can understand all these phrases and these great words that we've just looked at, and then we'll come back and talk a little bit more.
Where to, miss?
Hi, Crenshaw and Hawthorne at the Holiday Inn that is on that corner.
Sure thing. So, where are you flying in from?
From China.
Really? You don't look very Chinese to me, if you don't mind me saying so.
It's fine. I am actually from Mexico. I was in China on a business trip, visiting some local companies that manufacture bathroom products.
Wow, sounds interesting. Excuse me if I'm being a bit nosy, but how old are you?
Don't you know it's rude to ask a lady her age?
Don't get me wrong. It's just that you seem so young and already doing business overseas.
Well, thank you. In that case, I am 26 years old. And what about yourself?
I'm 40 years old and was born and raised here in the good old US of A. Although I have some Colombian heritage.
Really? That's great. Do you speak Spanish?
Yeah, of course.
Qué bien, entonces podemos hablar en español.
So, Marco, this taxi driver makes a bit of a mistake when he asks the woman how old she is.
Yes, yeah, exactly. There are a couple of questions that in some cultures are considered to be normal and okay,
Yep.
but in other cultures they're not really well accepted.
Okay, so in Anglo culture, for example, it's really impolite to ask a woman how old she is.
Right, women are a little bit more sensitive about their age. Others aren't so much, but it's usually better to just not ask.
Yep. And what else should we avoid talking about in small talk?
Well, for example, when you ask a person their occupation,
Yep.
you can ask what they do for a living, but don't ask how much money they make.
That's right. Anglo people are really sensitive about talking about money. We hate talking about money.
Right, so don't ask somebody their salary or how much money they make. It's just not considered to be polite.
And another good one to be careful of is asking if someone is married or not.
Right, sometimes you're just being friendly and you
Yeah.
want to know if that person has family or
Yeah.
something. But you have to be careful when and where you ask this question.
Right. So if they've mentioned their family, or if they talked about their kids or something else to do with their family, then it's okay.
Right, you can say, well, oh, how long have you been married?
Yeah.
But if a guy asks a girl, oh, are you married? It kind of sounds like maybe he's interested in her or that he's trying to come on to her and to be maybe more than friendly, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Starting a conversation with a taxi driver. Introduction. One day, Anna, an English learner, needed to go to a friend's house. She decided to take a taxi because it was the fastest way to get there. Anna was nervous because she didn't know how to talk to the driver in English, but she remembered what her teacher had taught her about starting conversations. Calling for a taxi. Anna stood by the road and saw a taxi. She raised her hand and the taxi stopped. The driver smiled and said hello. "Where do you want to go?" Anna replied with a smile. "Hello. I want to go to Green Street near the park." She spoke slowly and clearly so the driver could understand her. The driver nodded and said, "Sure." "Please get in." Inside the taxi, Anna sat in the back seat. At first, she felt shy and didn't know what to say. But then she thought, if I want to practice my English, I should talk to him. She started by saying, "The weather is nice today, isn't it?" The driver smiled again and said, "Yes, it is. It's sunny, but not too hot. Perfect for a drive." Anna felt a little more confident. She asked, "How long will it take to get to Green Street?" The driver replied, "It will take about 15 minutes. Are you visiting someone there?" Anna nodded and said, "Yes. I'm going to see my friend. She just moved to a new house." Learning more. The driver seemed friendly, so Anna asked, "How long have you been a taxi driver?" The driver said, "I have been driving for 5 years. I like it because I meet many people every day." "Where are you from?" Anna replied, "I'm from Mexico. I am learning English because I want to study in the UK." The driver said, "That's great. Your English is very good." Anna smiled and said, "Thank you. I'm trying to practice every day." Asking about the city. Anna wanted to learn more about the city. She asked, "What is the best place to visit in this city?" The driver said, "The park near Green Street is very nice. You can walk, sit, or have a picnic there." "Have you been to the museum downtown?" Anna shook her head and said, "No, I haven't." "Is it good?" The driver nodded and said, "Yes, it's very interesting. You can learn about the city's history and see old things from many years ago." Arriving at the destination. After some time, the taxi stopped. The driver said, "We are here. This is Green Street." Anna looked outside and saw her friend's house. She said, "Thank you so much." "How much is it?" The driver replied, "It's $12. Anna gave the money and said, "Here you go. Keep the change." The driver said, "Thank you. Have a great day." Anna smiled and said, "You too. Goodbye." Conclusion. Anna felt happy as she walked to her friend's house. She had a good conversation with the taxi driver and practiced her English. She learned that starting a conversation is not so hard. A simple hello or a question about the weather can make the first step easy. By being polite and friendly, Anna not only reached her destination, but also gained more confidence in speaking English. From that day, she was never afraid to talk to taxi drivers or anyone else in English.
The English Pod Audio Review. Listen to the meaning, then say the vocabulary word. That subject is too personal. Impolite.
Mind your own business.
Phrase you use when you don't want to answer a question.
That's personal.
Arrive.
Come in from.
Too much information.
TMI.
Too interested in others' private matters.
Nosy.
About a person's private thoughts, feelings, etc.
Personal.
Because of that.
In that case.
To look for private information about someone.
Snoop.
A polite phrase to use where you are saying something sensitive.
If you don't mind me saying so.
Do not misunderstand me.
Don't get me wrong.
Where would you like to go?
Where to?
In foreign countries.
Overseas.
To live in a place your whole life.
To be born and raised.
The United States.
The good old US of A.
Let's try that faster. Because of that.
In that case.
Where would you like to go?
Where to?
Arrive.
Come in from.
In foreign countries.
Overseas.
The United States.
The good old US of A.
About a person's private thoughts, feelings, etc.
Personal.
Do not misunderstand me.
Don't get me wrong.
To live in a place your whole life.
To be born and raised.
Too interested in others' private matters.
Nosy.
To look for private information about someone.
Snoop.
Too much information.
TMI.
A polite phrase to use where you are saying something sensitive.
If you don't mind me saying so.
That subject is too personal. Impolite.
Mind your own business.
Phrase you use when you don't want to answer a question.
That's personal.
Now say the word and hear it in a sentence.
Come in from.
Where are you coming in from so late at night?
Come in from.
Flight number 441 just came in about an hour ago.
Come in from.
I think I'll be coming into Chicago at about noon tomorrow.
If you don't mind me saying so.
If you don't mind me saying so, I think the curry could be a little hotter next time.
If you don't mind me saying so.
problem, if you don't mind me saying so. It's pretty simple. You need a new computer.
If you don't mind me saying so.
You look really good in that dress, if you don't mind me saying so.
Nosy.
Phil is always asking so many personal questions. Frankly, I think he is just too nosy.
Nosy.
People should just mind their own business and stop being so nosy.
Nosy.
I don't mean to be nosy, but did I hear you say you are from Canada?
Don't get me wrong.
Don't get me wrong, it's not that I think you stole my computer. It's just that you were the only one who can get into my room.
Don't get me wrong.
I do have a few problems with the plan, but don't get me wrong, I still think it's a great idea.
Don't get me wrong.
Don't get me wrong, I think John is a nice guy, but he is a bit disorganized.
In that case.
30 people are coming to the party? In that case, we'll need some more beers.
In that case.
Charles is having an affair? In that case, I think Mary needs to get a divorce.
In that case.
The car is that expensive? In that case, I don't think I will be able to afford it.